Welcome back folks, and welcome back to a new video. So today I want to talk about Dune Awakening a bit, because I think most of us have had the opportunity to play through the closed beta or ones which actually got access to it, and everyone kinda has the understanding of what this game is going to be now. Now, I've had the opportunity of actually playing throughout this version of the game 2 times, first time with the creator access and the second time with this closed beta, so I was able to go through it 2 times, and obviously the first time when I got into the game everything was new, you were learning new stuff, so the experience which you might actually get later on might not reflect that, so having to go through everything again really put some things into perspective on my positives and negatives and things which I basically enjoyed and things which I believe should have, be fixed for the, release of the game and improved later on, because ultimately that's going to help the game achieve what they had imagined for it. So first things first, when it comes to positives about Dune, well, the first obvious answer would be that it's set in the Dune universe, which I like, so automatically this game kinda became interesting to me because of that. Of course, a lot of people are saying that, if this wasn't Dune, it won't really get a lot of players, which, yeah, of course, a lot of these things are being sold with the setting you're in, the locations, and that's pretty much why they decided to go with the Dune IP, because right now it's, more popular than it was before because of the films and everything, so I think they want to capitalize on it and see how is it going to perform in that sense. And this is technically the only Dune survival game you can actually have right now, which puts you into the shoes where you're gonna be exploring Arrakis, where you're gonna be avoiding Shai Hulud, where you're gonna be fighting multiple opponents, where you're gonna be using melee against shields, the slow blade and everything. So I think right now on the market, they have this, how would I say, luck, because they are the only ones who are actually going into the Dune and also into this genre itself. And on the survival aspect, especially when it comes to gathering resources, I haven't really noticed, at least so far in these starting zones, that it was too tedious, so I was kinda able to build what I wanted, and I was able to craft what I wanted pretty much alone and really fast, because most of the resources are going to be around, so that's kinda cool. And later on, as you progress through the research levels and you unlock new stuff, the things when it comes to survival I think are going to be a lot more streamlined, because, well, you're gonna be able to get water in different ways, not just blood, and also you're kinda able to make more water out of that blood faster. And also when it comes to going to areas where you can gather better resources, or basically pick up better resources like research stations and wreckages, I think that was okay. Now obviously you can kind of think of it that each zone is going to have things similar to it, every single zone is going to have an Imperial testing station, every single zone is going to have wreckages where you're pretty much gonna be gathering same stuff. And that was okay, because to be honest, going through it 1 or 2 times, it was enough to gather most of the resources, and I think they wanted to do that because the goal of this game is not just to stay in one place, but to rather move to gather better resources and ultimately craft better stuff, because you gain nothing by staying in the starting areas. And from the PvE aspect, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this, because, well, you have people who don't like PvP, you're going to have people who don't like the lack of PvP, for example, besides wreckages, so I think for everyone who doesn't want a PvP straight away, I think this is going to be okay, because you're not really forced into it, and even wreckages that you visit, you can buy most of that stuff if you really don't want to go into it from traders. Where basically the idea Funcom has is to include PvP like the zone, the Deep Desert, which is going to change every single week, where you're gonna be going in, gathering some special endgame resources, and ultimately having that zone kind of retain that full PvP aspect, which I think is okay, because it kind of reminds me of expeditions in Division, or going to the Dark Zone, where you gather resources and get out, and then everything else is going into more of that PvE. So what I'm saying is that the gameplay loop, at least for me, who sort of enjoy these survival games in general, was okay, I wasn't really having a problem with it, and overall it was fun to play. But of course there are some negatives here which I experienced. Now of course this is the beta version of the game, but when you think about it, it's not coming out far away, so I'm pretty sure that some of the things that people experienced in the open beta are going to stay within the game, at least for the first month or two as it comes out, because these things usually require a lot more development time. So the biggest problem I have with this game right now is going to be combat, and not even like ranged combat. That was okay, I mean, pretty basic in that sense, like it was doing its job, like I did not really have a problem shooting enemies, although like enemies can be really precise, you know, when they're shooting at you, which can really raise the stakes as you're going towards like higher difficulty areas. But I mean, overall, like the ranged combat was okay, nothing special in that sense, but nothing which was causing me issues. Like, we're gonna talk about AI and how that behaves later on. But I think the bigger problem is with melee combat, which is a huge part of Dune in general, especially if you take into account the shields, where the slow blade only penetrates the shield, nothing else. So, I mean, fighting enemies like in melee combat can be a bit tricky, because I feel like the animations and the way like character moves and the way like locomotion is done and the way the responsiveness is done is not that okay, because one of the problems I have with melee is that every time you try to like attack an enemy, especially if you're fighting 2 or 3 melee enemies, like the camera is always going to lock in onto a certain enemy, and it does it in a really bad way where it honestly sometimes misses an entire guy. And the problem is, once you're going into that animation, you're pretty easy to be attacked by someone else within that problem because you cannot control your animation properly. And it's really basic in that sense, to the point where I really think that a good revamp of the melee combat is necessary, because I think this is greatly going to benefit the game on the long run, and it's going to make everything more enjoyable, because later on, like, you're kinda not forced, but it's more enjoyable to fight with a blade because a lot of enemies have the shields, and you can easily navigate around them in that sense to fight them in that way without using like ranged weapons all the time. But I still feel, and I felt it even in like the creators access, in the like closed beta, that I think that the melee combat really needs some work, because those animations, the snappiness of it, you know, sometimes, and the lack of it can be really problematic. And I'm actually thinking like maybe it's going to be problematic later on in the full PvP zone, because I think we got a taste of like what PvP like is going to kinda sort of look like with like the streamers and the event that they had, but I don't think it's the right representation of combat right now, especially because people really need more time to understand the aspects of the game and to kinda go through it. But I still feel like that's going to be problematic unless it's addressed. When you think about like the builds that the developers had and the one that we used, I'm pretty certain that they're doing something with that, of course, which is going to go into the final release of the game, hopefully. But if this continues in this way, I think they can get used to it. It's not really that problematic to get used to melee combat, but it's definitely frustrating and it's not fair. And I think if it was fair, I wouldn't really mind like having enemies which are a lot more stronger, because ultimately it comes down to you and your skill as a player. On the ability side, it's okay, like, you know, you can kind of get some use out of it as well, especially depending on like which class you're gonna be playing, so that's okay. But the melee side is definitely something the developers should focus on, because everyone is pretty much going to go in that style later on when everybody gets stronger and you get shields, which is going to be really hard to deplete with like a ranged weapon, although it's very much possible. Now also when it comes to AI in this game, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, it's not the brightest the way it fights. It can be kinda predictable, and sometimes it even glitches out to a point where I thought I was fighting like Paul Atreides or like Duncan Idaho in a sense, because they just do these animations which are so weird sometimes, and it turns combat into something which is not that enjoyable. But it's not a huge problem right now. I think the melee one is definitely a bigger problem, because enemies in this game in the open areas are okay. Like, you can easily like fool them, you can easily go on like a hill or something and start shooting. They're going to be pretty much useless. But in the closed down areas like testing station and wreckages, they can be a lot more deadlier, which is fine. AI sometimes just pretty much glitches out. Like, I've had enemies running away from me, standing next to me, not shooting me, then all of a sudden deciding to throw a bomb in front of them for no particular reason. So all of these things kinda should be fixed, you know, later on as the game comes out. And also enemies with like machine guns or like the miniguns, they were kinda funny to fight because they're not that precise and you can easily debate the way, like for example, they shoot, if they're going to hit you or not. So I think that, you know, fighting enemies wasn't that difficult in a sense. Maybe, as I said, sometimes they can glitch out and it can be unfair, especially once you combine that with melee combat, because I'm someone who wants to go into melee combat more and not only rely on ranged one. Now besides that, of course, there are some bugs and glitches which happen throughout the game, like that jankiness. Like for example, I've noticed my frame rate getting lower if there's a lot of bases nearby, but that's sort of expected on the server side, so hopefully that's fixed. And sometimes, for example, during trials and so on, I've had my FPS really drop down to like even 1 digit sometimes, and it wasn't explainable because even changing the video settings did not help at all. So I'm wondering, okay, if it's going to have stuttering there, I'm hoping that later on, especially in the deep desert, it's not going to have those instances where, due to like for example server problems or desync or something like that, you lose like your equipment or you lose your backpack or something. But the positive in that is if they down you in a sense, especially if you're not eaten by Shai Hulud, you can, you know, go back to your stuff if they don't pick it up, and things you drop are going to be from your backpack. You're not gonna be dropping your entire kit, like for example in Rust. So I think that aspect of it, where you don't really lose everything which you have, is also, I think, playing a plus that a lot of people are going to try to go into those PvP areas later on, just because they're not going to lose everything. So overall, I do enjoy this game, especially because, well, it's set in the Dune universe. I think, of course, that is carrying this game a lot in that sense, and I think a lot of people are gonna be getting into this because, hey, it's going to be Dune, it's going to be survival. Then, of course, you have everyone who has played Conan Exiles and so on, which are interested in this game as well. So to be honest, like, I've had fun in it, and I think that even if I get like 90 or 100 hours from this game, I think that's going to be time well spent. I don't know how well this game is going to develop later on. I know that Funcom likes to add things later on, like in the DLC, like form, etc, etc. And so far, developers said, so far, keep in mind, these are their words, that there's not going to be any power-ups or, you know, pay-to-win elements in the game, that most of the stuff, or well, all of the stuff is going to be on that cosmetic nature. So think like different swatches, colors for your bases, for your equipment, and so on. Which I really don't have a problem with, because these online games have to make money sometimes, and if they're making money off of cosmetics which have no influence on the gameplay whatsoever in terms of power, I'm going to be definitely okay with it. And look, I mean, I will give you my full impressions, like the full review, once the full game is out, because me, like everybody else, has to experience throughout the entire game, see, is it getting better later on, like how are those fights going to work, because they said that obviously in the higher tier zones the fights are going to become a lot more complex as you get more tools which are available to you. So I'm really interested to see how that is going to work. If I really have to use all of those tools, then of course, you know, testing out all of the vehicles. I really haven't tried the ornithopter at all or anything in that range, so, you know, trying out that will be interesting. And also having this PvE aspect, more relaxed one, I think it's going to be a huge plus. But am I interested in more? Definitely yes. I mean, I will definitely play this game once it comes out. I will cover it, obviously, and give you my first impressions about it. But you can let me know down below, what do you think about it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? What did you think about it? Do you wanna play it now, or after testing the beta you are maybe not interested in it anymore? I'm really interested to hear your opinions down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button for more, and also check us out on Twitter and Discord. Huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye bye.